Welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I am Nerder Doug, and tonight I have won the initiative in this topic of conversation with this nerd.
Nerdocus Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
Pretty awesome. First, for starters, I've had that on deck for like 3 weeks because I thought we were going to this topic 3 weeks ago, and then last week, and now we're finally on this week. But also, we just had a great start to the work week. We had an awesome weekend. It's been a great time, personally and professionally.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. Things are moving kind of fast. Like this was an idea that I had proposed because I've seen a variety of things in other games and how certain DMs tend to work with initiative, and like sometimes I look back throughout all the iterations of D&D, and I pulled out the Dungeon Master's Guide to the alternate initiative section and gave it a fresh.
Is there one in there?
There is, yeah.
Really, even in there, man, there's so many little, just little chunks of things that when I come across, I'm like, no shit.
Page 270 of your Dungeon Master's Guide has combat options. And one of those things is your initiative variance. So you could have the flat initiative score, you could have the side initiative, you can have speed factor.
Oh God, that reminds me of first edition.
You've got all of these different things, so I'm going to get into. I wasn't planning to jump right to here, but I'm gonna roll with it.
Yeah, go with me. I got my notes. I'm sure you got yours. So let it rip, man.
So the initiative score is basically like your passive perception.
Okay.
So you would have whatever you would typically roll for initiative as a modifier. You're just going to basically have that plus 10.
Well, oh, that's one of the options.
Yeah, that's like you have an initiative score.
Oh, okay, that's pretty cool. I can dig that. All right.
Go into combat. This is where you act.
Sure.
When you have those kind of set defaults, the party can have your standard operating.
Mm-hmm. Totally. That's an excellent, awesome point.
Do these things.
Yeah.
This person's going to follow suit by doing these things.
That's a really great point. Because it seems like that might be a drawback. Oh, that's boring. You do the same turn every time. It's like, yeah, but you can do totally.
You don't have to ask. All right, what's the initiative? What's the order? What did you get? Oh man, I rolled lower than this, and I wanted to do that. So like you don't have to have that swappy stuff that some people tend to do, but you just like you said, there is the drawback of the variable of what happens if but I definitely like that, and it might be worth considering for a certain certain style of game.
Absolutely.
To kind of speed things up.
Yeah, that actually dovetails with one of the points I was going to make, and it's funny because I didn't realize that was in the DMG, but it was sort of like that, and I was thinking like that could be almost like a boon or a reward of sorts to parties, and I was thinking like players that really like that tactical combat would probably love this too, of just like maybe you let the party just like decide what their initiative, their SO like standard operating procedure is. You can even base it on that, and like maybe if you have a high score, you can act lower if you want or something, or that could be like another great boon. It's like, oh, you have this thing where like, yeah, your initiative's always 15, but it's like you can delay that and just go whenever you want, almost like a legendary turn.
Right.
So that would be great. And yeah, I mean, you could totally plan out those things, and there wouldn't be as much confusion.
So your next option, your next variable is side initiative, which you guys
sounds intriguing.
Which you guys got to see not all that long ago in Dungeons and Delving during the Battle Royale.
Yeah.
You guys all acted at the same time, and each of the other groups wound up doing the same thing.
Yeah, okay.
We recently started playing Monster of the Week, and that's done that way as well. You have it's not an option, it's a you guys go, and that's how it works. Other games have it's monster and you, or you and then monster, so like,
oh, you mean like the when it's like there's like a party's turn, and but they can all okay, that's cool. So sort of like the same way the DMs are standard run the masters, they just all go on the same
So I like the concept of the side initiative because
I see what it means, like each side of the battle.
right. So like
Yeah.
if you've got a monster grouping and a player character grouping, you're basically rolling off against each other, and there
Hmm.
are no modifiers. It's just a straight D20 roll by what's in the book. And if your side wins, you go first. If your side loses, you go second. If you have multiple groups, 3, 4, 5, whatever
Hmm.
have you, the entirety of the group goes in whatever order, in whatever you roll. So that's what I had done with the Dungeons and Delving. There were 6 groups. I just happened to roll, for each of them,
Sure.
and I did it knowing that it was going to happen. I had it all rolled in advance so that I would put things, I would
Hmm.
put your group
Oh,
in
wherever we fell
roll
in there.
after the fact because I wasn't going to deprive you guys of
Yeah,
of
and that
that.
went very smoothly, I thought, for sure. Um, but yeah, those things. I mean, yeah, for groups that like have a fair amount of combat and stuff too, especially like that really like that kind of stuff, like just messing with the initiative. Those sound like a lot of just really easy ways to like really change things up, like
So
in that way, in that tactical way.
and with the side initiative, that is exactly what you'd have the ability to do. Is if you want to have I'm going to go after you because of what you're going to do causes X, then
Hmm.
I can do that, but we're not locked into that situation come next round, because in side initiative, it's our group gets to decide how we go when it's all of our turn. So
Yeah.
you might go before me this turn, but I need to go before you next turn because of what you're going to do is reacting to
Hmm.
what I
And
have.
that makes sense too, because you think like the more characters are like in these situations together, they would kind of know what each were capable of and what they ought to do and stuff. So even allowing for a little bit of table talk, because it's like, well, the players aren't tactical geniuses that can make those split-second decisions, but their characters would be after a while. So I would allow that to some extent if they're all going at the same time. And
Sure.
that's kind of something you guys and by turn that same turn me have been doing for a long time too, at least in the sense of like when there's multiples like types of enemies or like another group comes in or something gets
Mhm.
summoned or whatever. To
So,
just have like a third thing maybe
uh,
before or after the turn.
absolutely. So, real quick, a couple things, from the
Sure.
chat. Shahrazad 221 says Star Wars lets players swap around initiative, which can be super fun, and tactically too. Fifth edition doesn't really have the whole I'm going to delay without the
It's pretty clunky.
consequence. Was that
It's kind of clunky. I mean like red and or not, maybe not clunky, but just like it severely limits
yes, you
what
you
you can
cannot
do.
you cannot move your entire turn by raw to somewhere else in the initiative, either for the round or permanently.
Yeah.
So like it does create a challenge. Like you have to, oh, my action is I'm going to hold and ready this particular thing for this, and then it costs me my reaction. It definitely could use an overhaul
Yeah.
for sure. And there's
And situations can change so much before like you think those conditions like, well, yeah, it'll probably happen.
right.
And then it's just like, the
and
thing
and
you're waiting for might die or run away. And you're like, well, I just wasted my whole turn.
30
And the spell I had ready or whatever.
I would say 33% of the time that somebody is holding for a specific action, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Based off of what I've seen within fifth edition.
Hmm.
That
I want to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, that was it.
I want to say I read it might be somewhere in the DMG or maybe it was like a sage advice or I'm just remembering wrong, but I want to say there's something I saw not too long ago that's like if you hold your action ready and like the thing doesn't happen before the end of the turn, it lasts until the start of your next turn. That's right. So it's
Yeah,
like you don't lose. I mean, you still could lose it, but it's like if the round ends, you still might be able to
yes.
get it off. Whereas I think in older
And
editions, it was just like if the round ended, sorry.
some DMs are very very strict about it. Of like all right, you did not act. The thing that you said you were waiting for didn't happen. Therefore, since there was no trigger, you cannot do X and your turn is lost. Your action is wasted because you can't switch to something else. Some DMs are a little bit more forgiving. It's like, look, it's going to be your turn again. Is there something that you want to do? And then you get the whole, well, so this player gets 2 turns, So
Yeah.
like it gets very ugly to some degree. But then the last
Well, I guess it
optional,
makes sense because it's your reaction. But anyway, sorry. Yeah.
yeah, and then the last option that's in the DMG is something that is definitely crazy and held over from second edition, and that's adding in speed factor. Uh, and that's if you're going to do something that typically takes more time or should certainly happen slower, like I'm going to attack with a big weapon.
Mhm.
There are penalties to your initiative, lowering down the count. Whereas if you were going to cast a low level spell, or sorry, if not spells, but if like you're going to attack with a light or finesse weapon, if you are tiny or small, like these would be modifiers. You could
Mhm.
actually get even higher. So
Yeah.
you want to attack, you want to be a halfling with a rapier, and that's going to give you a +4 to your initiative. All right,
Yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
because it's a finesse weapon.
Yeah. Right.
But it also, says like you can't add the same modifier twice. So if I attack with 2 daggers,
Oh,
that's
you're not gonna
that's
get
not a
like.
+4. It's
Yeah.
just a +2.
Right. Right.
But
Well, again, those things are probably of interest to people, and it's cool that they're in the DMG for people that like, engage in a lot of combat. And those ways do kind of make it more tactical and kind of more like realistic for sure. You think like, I mean, I've certainly played plenty of video games that do all that math for you, where it's just like,
oh
well,
yeah,
yeah, I have like a dagger equipped. It's like the dude attacks faster, it does less damage, but whatever. I just don't want to do all that math, and that's just not interesting. And it's like for the 1 or 2 fights per session that I typically have, that's would just make them take even longer.
yeah. So one of
But
the
it's cool
things,
that they're in there because I'm sure tons of people find that stuff fascinating and interesting to like, you
so
know, to
one of
have
the
different
things that I
weapons for different things and stuff like that.
one of
I
the
used to
things
be
that I
like a
saw one of the things that I saw, with the speed factor, and the initiative options I've looked at, and I think could be a lot of fun with a small group, and that are into like the more tactical end of the game, is what I would refer to as like reactionary initiative. So
okay.
you play with whatever initiative rules you're going to do, like whether you're using speed factor or not. But after you've determined what the order is, you now have another step where you go to the lowest number and say, what are you doing? And you orient your movement and you declare what your action is,
Mm-hmm.
because you've started doing it. And then you go
Is
up.
that what was that second edition too? Is that sort
That,
of
that
like
was that was an optional in
oh,
second
was it
edition.
that like
At
everybody
least
sort
it
of
was
like
was
said
it
what they were gonna do
it was
ahead
an
of time?
optional at a table that I played in for a little while.
Oh,
It
okay.
was a concept where like those who are going to act fastest essentially are reacting the quickest, because when you look at a battlefield, things are not going to change quickly over 6 seconds. And the ones who are the fastest thinkers, the fastest movers, are the ones who essentially have the ability to control the action. All
Okay.
right, that dude over there has got a giant sword and he's charging towards my ally. Well, I could flick a dagger at him and see if I could take him out so he doesn't attack. You know,
Yeah, that makes sense. I can like buy into that
but you
perspective
have
too.
you have this extra layer of action every round, because you have to go through the order in reverse and declare what's happening, and the situations might change,
Hmm.
and that could either remove what you were planning to do, because like if I start moving that way and now all of a sudden there's no one there for me to attack, I ran out of movement. Where can I go? What can I do? Just like in the other area, you might lose an action.
That seems I, that part I think I would give some leeway on the movement part, because it's like if you were like, I'm gonna run at that guy, and your turn came up and they weren't there, like I could, in real life you wouldn't, like they didn't move so fast that they cleared like 30-foot space in like,
Right.
a blink of an eye, unless they're like the Flash, you know what I mean?
Right. True.
It's like I'd probably give some wiggle room on that.
Yeah, I mean,
Like you could run towards that person. Not like, nope, you said you were going to go to that point. There's nobody there. Or like they create a pit trap or something. Although that would be kind of interesting. I mean, again, if you're like super duper tactical, this stuff's probably fun as heck. Like I mean, if you had the minis, it's like straddling that line between like a Warhammer-ish, like sort of thing where you're like, really getting into like the movement and all that.
But it's something that I've thought about, but like as we've moved away from how important combat is
Mm-hmm.
at our particular tables, like adding in another layer to make combat take even longer seems like a step in the wrong direction for the tables.
Yeah.
But it is something that I've thought of, and I'm like, since initiative is up, here is the chance to kind of talk about it, depending upon how things go over the next handful of days. I might do an initiative write up and include what Ted's optional rule is for a reactive or what have you, or I might go in another direction when we get down to newsletter stuff.
No. I've got a spin on initiative that I'm going to use for our next Tuesday night game. So I think it's a mishmash of several systems, and I don't actually remember what the quests thing is now. But I'm going to have it where each, like when it's your initiative, you choose who goes next, and that includes the GM, and hopefully, because it's like, well, I don't see this group so tactically, we're like, we're just going to make Doug go last so we can like kick the butt of the thing, you know what I mean? It's like, I feel like with the right group, it's like, well, it could add that bit to it.
Well, I'm eager to see how.
I think the default is the GM just always decides who goes next. Like you don't even roll. We're just like, I think you should go next, Ted, and then after you, like, I think I should go.
I'm eager to see how Quest plays out, and how. And this is not an insult to Quest, but how like simple the character design is with the things that you have planned story wise that I'm loosely aware of. I'm trying to like, all right, how are we gonna control the ship and cook the things, and knowing what I know about the four of our characters, which is not much. I'm like, all right,
well, we'll have our sessions here and stuff.
Oh, absolutely, and I'm not worried. Believe me, I have more than enough faith in your abilities here. So,
well, truth be told, it's more that I have faith in y'all's role playing, because really the game, like the nuts and bolts of the game, is to get people to just tell a story. For instance, like, how are you gonna move the ship? It's like, I don't know, you guys could just come up with some plan, and then you just roll that die, and it's like there's no modifiers or anything. It's like that's just how you're approaching it. And so all those little like things that don't seem crunchy, like what your character's dream is, or like the 12 just mundane items they have, and things like that, those are how you approach those problems.
Yeah, off air I need to ask you about that one. So
sure.
But with that, I will sideline the conversation on initiative, because we're talking about the Tuesday night game. I will say that I am super excited for several reasons for tomorrow night's conclusion of at least season 1 of Dungeons and Delving. I don't think I've been this excited to wrap up a game, or to run a game in general, for a long time. I think maybe like when I ended the 4-year game of Curse of Narcissus.
Wow.
I dropped this mammoth jam.
Yeah, that thing is so cool looking, man. You really knocked it out of the park. And I got to play in that game, that final finale. That was pretty neat.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, that was actually painted by former intern Jake.
Oh yeah, he's good. He's really good.
Yeah, I
I was helping him with a project that he's putting together, like a digital, 5e
awesome.
product. So that was
Yeah,
pretty fun.
I had told him the once it's actually up and available to let us know, and then
Oh,
we'll
cool.
spread the word because gotta help people out.
Yeah, he's a solid dude.
But with everything that's happened, I've loved what you guys have done with the story. I've loved where things have kind of all unfolded. And I've got hopefully, I've got planned what I think is going to be a really great session. I think you guys are gonna really enjoy it. But then there's
Yeah, no
that
doubt.
excitement of, all right, I get to pass the torch
Yeah,
and hand it over to you and
yeah,
be able to take a little breather from the DM's chair on Tuesdays.
yeah. That's like the perfect kind of setup for a group in general. It's just like there's, everybody agrees. It's like, no, I'm going to do this, and then somebody else is going to DM. Like there's no like forever DM thing going on. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of freedom of saying, we're just gonna do this, and we're just gonna have some fun. It's just a blast, and
Hmm.
when you've got a rock solid group like we have, we know that like there are times that as a DM, you get to just sit back and listen
Hmm.
and let the players interact. This is not exactly initiative, but it was something that I occasionally struggle with some groups, uh, and like trying to find what is the connection here, what is the connection there. Some games, it's handled right in character creation. Sometimes it's handled in session zero, but when it's not, like it's thrust upon the players to find those kind of connections. And
Hmm.
you know, even with decades of experience at the table, I spent a lot of those years not really building the foundations that many new players to the game automatically do. To me, I think it takes a conscious effort to be like,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
make sure
Well,
because
yeah. Oh, yeah.
the
There's
law.
unprecedented discourse going. I mean, to in our defense, because I'm the same way. We never did half this stuff or even thought about it, because like, well, there wasn't like millions of people sharing their insights and stuff. So we had to just figure all that stuff out. So like people come in, and it's kind of interesting to um like see newer players' reactions to discovering those things too, about the game that we had to like figure out through trial and error and stuff.
I mean,
But yeah, but you're totally right. Like, yeah, and actually, as you were talking, like it just clicked for me what's intimidating about being a GM for me, because it's not always the same level, but like with this group in particular, it's mostly like, man, am I going to be able to like come back with as much interesting stuff as they're going to be throwing out there? You know what I mean? Like with my old friends, it's like, yeah, I know them. It's like I can keep up with them, no problem. It's like, geez, these are like, this this is like a crazy fun like
well,
creative group.
well, Doug, are we allowed to tease out? Have we talked about what?
Yeah.
All right, so I've watched all of Ingest Quest season one, years ago, and I'm rewatching. I just finished today episode 5, gas
Okay.
station sushi. Uh,
Oh,
you
that was a
know,
weird one.
yeah. So like, I can't imagine, that you're going to bring any less to the table than what you did for those games. And it was a blast. It was enjoyable, to watch, and it's enjoyable to rewatch. Um, you
Yeah,
know,
those were fun.
and you had a great group then. You've got a
Oh
great
yeah.
group now. I'm eager to see what you do with the story. I'm eager to see how the quest rules will interact with what you had previously done as a strictly D&D game. But with going quest, we've got a little bit more freedom
Hmm.
what our characters are and what they can do. So I'm definitely intrigued to see, from a not only a story standpoint, of how the story continues from, Ingest Quest to
Yeah,
the new Ingest Quest.
yeah.
But as to, you know, where things go and how Quest helps evolve this. So one of
Hmm.
the things we like to do on the channel is to show you guys some new games and some new things. So this is what Doug will be running in a handful of weeks. Tomorrow is episode 12 of Dungeons and Delving. We typically have a week off, a week for us to do our session 0. So if I pull up a calendar real quick. That is tonight. Is this off third? So May 10th, I'm guessing, is probably when we'll be airing episode 1
Yeah.
of
May 11th.
the 11th.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to look at the
Is
Tuesday.
your calendar like the Sundays on the other
No,
end?
I was looking at the 19th because
Ah,
that's what's folded for today, not for
okay.
tomorrow.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So
Um,
May 11th should be the next season of Ingest
woo
Quest.
woo.
The continuation of
Food, fun, and fantasy in a phlogiston-filled space. Um, so one of the more intriguing, maybe the most interesting thing about initiative to me in D&D terms, particularly, but I guess most games, is that like, you feel like, wow, you can't really talk about initiative without talking about combat. Asterisk. That's another bullet point. But there is no other signifier in the game that like, okay, now we're doing something different. Like now we're in this different mode. There's no like, oh well, that means there's a social interaction. If like when they say like, okay, well let's roll for initiative. It's like it's like a Pavlov's dog or like a trigger in people's mind. Like even if you're kind of not paying attention, you're on your phone, you're like, let's roll for. You're like, what? What?
and I will
Now we're doing
actually
something.
I'll actually combat you there, because in the first season of Ingest Quest, you actually called for an initiative roll into something that was not combat.
Was it just timing to see?
There was timing things going on, and you wanted to see how everyone was reacting. So you actually had them roll initiative and had them
Wow.
go into it.
Well, that was my asterisk because that's especially useful like when people start talking over each other or like, oh, I want to do this and that and this and cast the spell. It's like, okay, wait. That means there's like people doing stuff and timings involved. So let's roll.
Yes. So that is
I've done it for a tree climbing challenge before. Yeah. The players just, it was like an impromptu. They just wanted to race each other climbing this like humongous tree. And I was like, all right, let's throw initiative.
So that is one of those things that I think a lot of DMs wind up missing out on, is setting up and breaking the mold of that term initiative, so that you can say roll initiative and see how people are going to react to some kind of trap or hazard, how someone
Mm-hmm.
is going to react to a situation that is unfolding in the middle of town square. It might
Yeah.
not be
Yeah, it
combat.
could even be a social interaction sort of situation. Maybe you end up casting like calm emotions and like, using your turn to make a persuasion check to like, bring up another point, a counterpoint or something.
So like that is definitely one of those things that I think a lot of people need to basically break out of that mold and really go into a whole new turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a powerful tool.
What
You
else you
know.
got?
Well, I mean, there's other than it determining when people go in combat. I mean, as far as like game terms, it comes up in layer and legendary actions, which are super fun and you know, kind of like tangentially related to initiative, add a huge amount of like variety and spice to combat situations.
I am.
Have you ever had a situation where there was multiple legendary creatures in a combat? I never have.
I
I
don't.
just thought
I don't believe I've ever put more than one thing that had legendary actions in there. But as crazy as combats as I've done with high level games, it's possible, but usually not. I think
yeah.
during, and it's been long enough that if you haven't watched the Curse of Narkita stuff, and I think Dave put everything up, but like the Narcitus had 2 towers,
Mm-hmm.
and he had abilities, and the towers had abilities. But I think they might have been like the lair actions.
Oh, right, right.
Um, but
Well,
I
that's sort of related to initiative too, because they take place on
yes,
initiative
and
point.
that's one of the things that I was coming in
Yeah.
prepared to talk about is you know nothing beyond the concept of reaction, which did exist in previous editions. The concept of like that legendary action is an amazing break of the typical initiative order.
Oh, yeah.
It allows creatures to really act in a way that makes a lot of sense. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go on my turn and I'm going to do all of this stuff. And for the most part, Wizards puts out, well, you have 3 legendary actions, but like I've seen some of the stat blocks for things that other people have made and I have made.
Mm-hmm.
When you have got more than 4 players at a table, it's not a bad thing
No.
to be able to increase the amount of legendary actions a creature might be able to take so that you can spread out the damage more and essentially give that monster a higher, not challenge rating, but a higher challenge to the party. Um, I
We
look, oh, go ahead.
when we did the D&D in a castle, we juiced up our final boss with extra legendary actions and layer actions, because I
Yeah,
mean that was crazy. There were 17 characters in the combat. And I
well, that
think one of
was
us, like, all we did, I think it was me, I just did the layer and legendary actions, and it was like that was a handful to keep
you,
track of, like, where are all these people and like what's going
you
on.
controlled the initiative order, the legendary actions, the lair actions. I
That was
can
a lot of work.
I controlled um, whatever the constructs were that the people were
Oh
chained
yeah, that's
to.
right. Yeah, they were like shield guardian type
Yeah,
things.
that was it. Shield guardians that had people chained to them,
Mm-hmm.
and then Dave ran, the Elder Brain,
Yeah.
and then there were 17 players. The
Yeah,
combination of
that
things.
was definitely the most epic game of D&D I've ever participated in.
I mean
No
that
doubt.
that was that was something that was an absolute unique experience, because it's never going to happen again. Uh,
Yeah.
like while like the players I talked to, they're like, that was amazing, but I'm not certain I'd want a repeat performance.
Yeah, yeah.
So like to be able to walk away and be like, yep, that's what we did. We fought
A once in a lifetime event.
17th level characters or some nonsense like that.
Yeah. That was insane. Um, Chris Hasnick says you get thrown environmental effect with the X on its own initiative count. Yeah, I mean, it's not strictly initiative. I mean, layer actions, but also regional effects. I mean, and it's funny because a lot of those are sort of generic. There's ones where like they can make a perception check, which is helpful if there's like that sneaky rogue's eyes hiding and such. But like, there's some pretty interesting ones, and when you like step back and look at them as a whole, I always use the Mummy Lord as a great example. I don't remember all the things exactly, but like as a cohesive thing, it's like that is just one creature is incredibly dangerous to approach, encounter, and then like deal with finally. I mean, just getting to where a Mummy Lord is, it's like those regional effects are crazy. And then like if you consider, I mean, I don't think layer, well, yeah, they say like anything within blah 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 feet. I think the Mummy Lords is like anything in the basically structure that it's in is its layer. So it's
Right.
like anytime they're in there, like those things could just happen every 6 seconds,
Yep.
or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like
Mummy
that's
Lord
just
is no
one
joke.
creature.
Mummy Lord is no joke.
Yeah, and
And
and it looks like a chump that goes down. It's vulnerable to fire, but it's like if
yeah,
you don't find that canoptic jar, I'm just gonna come back again and again and again and again and again.
hey, remember me? Hey,
Yeah, yeah, I think those are great.
the to a certain type of DM, it seems like it could be a pushover. But if
Mm-hmm.
you are, you know, if you have got experience behind the table and you want to plan this properly, yeah, you're going to have that jar, hidden or not even there, somewhere that the party is not going to be able to find it. It's supposed to be a reoccurring villain. It has to
Yeah,
be a threat that's like, holy crap, we just beat this thing, and oh crap, now it's back again.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like those got those lingering diseases and things you can't heal and stuff like that.
As far as Chris's comments about environmental effects, I would totally do that. As a layer action, or as you said, a regional thing that's going on. I think that's the easiest to do because like it's got the set thing of it happens at initiative 20, losing all ties or winning all ties, depending upon how you want to, run your particular table.
Yeah. So yeah, let's see.
You
What
guys
we
have
talking
any
about?
initiative questions? As
Yeah,
always, feel free to throw them in the chat. Throw up a question in front of it. I know that there are feats and things that have given, bonuses to initiative and what have you.
Yeah, there's not a lot. I was trying to look up of some of them, and some. There's actually there's a spell, Gift of Alacrity,
Okay.
which is I think that's a Dunamancy spell from
Yep.
Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. And then I wrote these down, but I don't remember what they actually do. There's the Relentless feature, and then Sorceress. Oh yeah, those the ones where like you get key back or maneuvers or sorcery points like on initiative count 20 if you don't have any.
Oh yeah, the high level abilities that that bring those things back.
So what does that mean? Is like say you're 20th level, whatever, or the level that you're, because it always say like on initiative count 20 blah 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 happens. Can you just like get in a fight with like a squirrel or something to be like, just like I'm gonna fight that squirrel and get your key back and I'm just kidding, I'm gonna run away. I don't want to kill the squirrel.
I mean, I don't think that.
I mean, couldn't you just essentially give it enough time? Well, I guess if you took enough time, you could just take a short rest.
If you wanted to rest, you could get certain things back. Yes, Aaron, the alertness feed is definitely something that's there.
But not a whole lot, which leads me to believe that it's like a powerful thing, like affecting the initiative. And and there's nothing that. Oh no, wait! The cutting words that can affect other people's initiative. One of the very few things that does that.
We know bards can add half the proficiency bonus to their initiative modifier because it is a stat check, which they don't add their proficiency bonus to it. We know that certain class features, get you to get you to add other things. We did the highest initiative character.
Oh yeah, when you absolutely must go first. Yeah, that guy's nuts. I think he basically added everything except their constitution to their initiative. Like if they had a passive initiative, it would have been like 39 or something like
that. Well, in Dave's game, my artificer has a longsword that part of its feature. It's basically just a +1 weapon that when you draw it from its sheath, it roars like a dragon.
That's awesome.
But it adds a +2 to your initiative modifier. So
when you do that,
no, just
when you're just having it,
when you have it, when you're attuned to it,
so you can strike like the dragon. That's an awesome. I mean, that's a powerful thing with the initiative, and it's just +1. But like, and then having the like dragon, that's pretty cool.
So I definitely dig the sword, and it has absolutely changed what my character as a battlesmith was doing.
Oh, really?
Prior to having that, he would have his woodcarver's tools out, or his technically his bone carver tools before we actually had scrimshaw tools as a thing. But he would just be like, all right, I've got my little carving knife and I've got this big old honking shield, and he'd send in his battle defender, and you go fight it. And he would sit here and cast his little artificer cantrips, and then we got this sword, and then we got some levels, and I'm like, well, you know what? I'm gonna go fight these things, and I'm gonna whack things with a sword.
Does he, as a character, like feel empowered that it's like that sort of relic-y type item?
It has definitely been imparted to him that there are certain
it kills better.
Well, no, there's certain parts of area of the world that he can't he can't show that sword too, because like it's like a mark of status to have that sword, and he doesn't have the status to go with the rest of it.
Ooh, that's like that's a good like sort of role playing hook.
Yes,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there are certain areas we haven't gone there yet, so I don't have to worry about it for now. But I think it's a good foreshadowing that at some point in time, the story's going to go there, and I'm going to be like, I can't pull out the sword. Like, I have to go back to casting cantrips.
Let's
But
see,
I
good.
absolutely love that character. He's a lot of fun to play.
Yeah, that sounds like a really fun game. I like that setting. I was just telling Dave today, I was talking to him on the phone. I was like, I never have been like a huge dino nut or anything. I don't hate him or anything, but just wasn't, my jam. But it's like, yeah, something about the like Land of the Lost thing and in a D&D world, it's like that just sounds cool. And I don't know. I would like. I think that's a
I've
cool.
I've
Like,
never had a problem with dinosaurs existing, with D&D. If you're
no,
gonna have things as big as dragons, dinosaurs are a good thing, because then the dragons can eat the dinosaurs and not the people.
yeah.
You know, uh, but I mean, we got to 2 sessions ago we fought a Ankylosaurus and a Stegosaurus, and then last session we fought a T-Rex, and the T-Rex basically got a turn, maybe two, and he's like, I really should have used two of these things.
Dave's got to get a bone up on like Magic the Gathering Ikoria setting. That's the one that had all those mashed up like dinosaur parrots or like jumping like shark pterodactyls and stuff like that. I've been playing a lot of Magic.
Apparently. I just
Good times, bad times had a question. Does side-based initiative bend the action economy in favor of the side-based group? When they go, they all go. If they roll high, and there are many of them, it feels lopsided. I would say, yeah, but at the same time, if you're all, if your group is playing that way, you're gonna like take that into account as the DM, knowing, when you're kind of developing encounters, like, well, I'm not just gonna have one thing all the time because it's or that could be a fun challenge, like we were talking about with all those layer and legendary actions. Like, hey, it might be one guy, but it's like, if half the party gets ensnared by tendrils of whatever on initiative count 20.
So I would say that it absolutely is going to be dependent upon the type of encounter that you want to run and the type of DM that you are. So if you are a very combat heavy DM and you are looking to put a very challenging encounter against them, you know, let's say an equal adventuring party, there's 5 of them and 5 of you, and they focus fire. It is entirely possible that 2, maybe 3 of your characters go down without them taking any kind of damage. Yes, it absolutely then becomes one-sided, especially if they've taken out, your most aggressive or your most, healing capable characters. Then they're going to just steamroll. So if you're
It's
going to
going to
do
be
those,
brutal either way. Like
yeah,
whoever starts getting the advantage, like it's just going to be. But I mean that could mimic that sort of like brutal, world that people like.
it's the same kind of thing that happens in a fight where the enemy is surprised, and I've seen it where it's like, all right, we didn't need to roll initiative because the enemy all went down without getting a turn. Okay, we just move on from here.
No
So
spells were expended.
so when you look at the side-based initiative, you really have to, as a DM, plan things in accordance with what kind of group you have, and work your way up the chain of how do you threaten, what kind of things do you do, because I've done a massively overpowering monster that has rolled poorly, has lost initiative, and didn't get a whole lot of turns, even though it should have greatly impacted the fight and done a significant amount of damage. It is what it is. It happens.
Mm-hmm. You get
Other
them next
times,
time.
other times I've had fights where the dice have been in my favor. I had 4th, 5th level characters that went up against an animated armor, and because they were choosing not to use because it was the first encounter of the night. They weren't going to use their more powerful stuff. They were not willing to expend any resources, and they were having a hard time connecting to that high armor class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are surprisingly tough.
And they're only a challenge 1. They're designed for, being able to fight, a low level party. And I was like, look, this is one dude. How is the rest of the night going to go if they can't take
It's
this?
because they hit hard too. It's not like they're just like a tank that like, hits like a feather. It's like they have a pretty decent attack too.
Yeah. So like, I'm glad I only used the 1, like what if I had used 2?
Yeah.
So like you've got the capabilities of feeling out what's there. So if you feel that it's lopsided and it's not going well, this is just an optional rule.
Yeah, just talk with the players like, nah, I don't like this.
As the GM, you're in control of the story here. You're in control of, you're in the driver's seat. You've got this car. If you don't like the lane that you're in, put on the blinker, talk to the party, change lanes, and make sure everybody's happy.
Yeah. Or if you're a player, by the same tune, if you're a player and the group's doing that, I mean, you don't have to be mean about it, just be like, hey, I'm not really liking this side-based initiative, if you are doing that.
Right.
Like, wait,
yeah, I mean,
try something else.
For the most part, if you're playing D&D, you're probably playing with someone who either is your friend or you hope to be your friend.
Yeah.
So if there's an issue, you can always talk to them. You can always say, hey, could we go back to the regular system, or can we try something else? I don't feel this is working out, and see what happens. I think you'll find that most people are amiable to a conversation, and even though session 0 implies before session 1, like there's nothing to say that you can't put a pause on a game either mid-session, in between sessions, or before the next session of like, look, can we get 10 minutes, talk out whatever problem you have, and then move on? Like there's nothing to say that you can't do that.
I'm going to slyly segue that into my last bullet point that I had.
Go for it. Yeah.
Which was just the definition of initiative, and that is assessing and initiating things independently. And those are just kind of, like those sorts of things. And we say it all the time about any kind of issues when people ask questions, is like, just bring it up to the players. Even amongst us on our Tuesday night group, there's more than once, like on our Discord or whatever, people have been like, hey, was that cool that I did that? Or like, what do you guys think about this? Or like, maybe something you said in character, it's like, was that mean or whatever? Or like, just checking in with people. So yeah, just taking the initiative to be a good human being. But as a player, and me, I love when players take the initiative and just like do the things. And I've sort of, it sort of conflicts with that same sort of anxiety I said earlier, like, what are they going to do? But, after a long time ago, just realizing like, look, man, you can plan for a million things and they won't do any of them. So it's like, you're better off just like thinking of like the setting and the world and some things that exist there and how you picture it, so that when they do things, you can have like at least a plausible in that context something happen.
I agree. I feel, that term initiative, means to, reach out and grab, to go forward, to take that initiative, as it's called. So however it is that you want to start a conversation, start a movement, start a game. I've talked about this many times here on the channel. My son is almost 13. My daughter is 9, and they enjoy gaming. They're not anywhere near as enthused as I am to do all the levels at which that I do, but both of them have shown not only interest to keep going, but like my daughter is interested in writing story and background and wants to run a game at some point in time without
awesome.
any clue as to how to actually play or run the game. But, at 9, she is thinking of, well, if I were in the player seat, what would I want? So, like, she's looking at that kind of stuff. Now, unfortunately,
but unfortunately,
as a 9-year-old, playing with, kids that are, 12, 13, 15, what have you, like nobody else that is in our group is going to want to do the things that she's planning, and it would break her heart to tell her. But I'm hoping that as she ages and plays the game a little more and see what is actually unfolded, is able to tailor her story towards that. So at some point in time, she's going to run a game, and I'm going to be her, like, her coach or co-DM,
Sure.
to help out not only with the rules, but to help mitigate whoever she winds up getting to play at the table and what have you.
I got a recommendation for you. I just actually turned Professor Bill onto it because he started playing D&D with his family, his wife, and his kids. They're pretty young. They're like around your daughter's age.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the DM's Guild. It's one of those extra life things. So it goes, it's from Wizards of the Coast. So when you get it, the money goes to extra life. But it's called like Adventures with Muck, like MUK, and then there's Everything Muck Learned from Tasha, and they're like 4 kids, and it's like an activity book, and Muck's this little goblin, and it sort of like teaches the fundamentals of like being a DM. Like it's not it's just an activity book. But I was looking through, I'm like, even as a veteran GM, I'm like, these are good lessons. I'm like, those are things you might forget, or just like in these little activities, it's like that's a good thing to spur creativity. But there's also like a pared down adventure in D&D in the back with like pre-generated characters like Muck and his friends and stuff. So and he was loving it. So I always recommend that. I think it's pretty cool just for me.
We'll have to check that out. Be able to pass along to my kids.
Yeah.
And we as gamers, we need to take the initiative and continue the gaming torch. As I talked about, passing the DM torch to you after tomorrow night's session. We have to keep the generations going. We have to convince someone to take the initiative and pick up the charge, because if nobody wants to sit in the DM seat, it's a lot harder to play this game.
Start with single encounter, man. Like that's just from I'm just inundated with D&D people all day. I mean, that's our job and everything. And like just that trepidation of being a DM for the first time. I think a lot of it, just from observation, is feeling like you have to have like a campaign planned out. It's like, just honestly, God, just start with like an encounter. I would propose that to my friends, just like, hey, can I just run like a combat encounter to see how it works, and or whatever, half hour maybe.
I was actually having a conversation again with my daughter at dinner tonight, and she was asking like about what have you prepped, and how has things gone.
And I've done child, I don't prep anything.
Well, no, I mean with the last game that I ran was what was his name? The Curse of Zoltan. I ran that very much as prepared material. I didn't write everything out and do all of the things, but
you knew the beats that you were going to hit.
Yeah, I planned out and created dungeons and monsters, and it was a very
I didn't know.
Yeah, it was a very formulaic. I've actually got it all in Google Docs, and I knew when I sat down that evening what was to transpire, because the players had said that they wanted to do a 12-session story arc. And after having ran a more than 4-year game where it was willy-nilly, we're not caring about things, to we're going to lock into 12 story beats.
That is such a big
sessions
effect on your. It's like a relief kind of as a DM too, and a player. But just like, okay, we're not going to role play out every minute of the day here. Sometimes you might, but
when you lock me into, I need to run X sessions, and you need to tell that story over that, that gives me like, okay, where are my story points? What am I looking for?
Yeah.
Which is why when I did, the pitch for Dungeons and Delving, it was the idea of, one episode out of the dungeon, one episode in, knowing full well what the flow was going to be. And
such a good game.
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
And for me, it was definitely a different take because I really haven't done, you know, that style game before. I didn't really do a mystery before. Doing, you know, more future or modern future type
Well, hey,
scenario.
you take the initiative with each campaign you run. It seems like, and really like consciously try like I want to try to do this. Like I want to do this better, so I'm gonna like focus on
Well,
this.
I mean, I feel that and I'm not trying to, you know, toot my own horn. It's more for my own personal
Yeah,
growth, but
sure, I
like
get it.
I feel, you know, as being a part of Nerdarchy, and we're at what, 7 years at this point in time,
Wow, yeah,
I have to challenge myself. I have
yeah.
to say, you know, what haven't I done so that
Got a rep to uphold.
I can continue to grow and expand my own capabilities,
Yeah.
so that, you know, when people ask, you know, oh well, yes, I have done that actually, you know,
Yeah.
here's where you can find it, you know. uh I want to do different things, and you
Mhm.
know, there's never going to be a time where I've played every single RPG, done every voice, you know, done every role. It's just not feasible. But you know, there are things that I feel, you know, I can say, well, without a doubt now, I've ran a mystery, and I felt that it wasn't anything that was so obvious that you guys are like, oh, well, this is clearly the thing here. I released enough clues and put things together so that during, you know, the session when I wanted it to be revealed, you guys were able to, you know, make it happen.
I'll say this of your mystery. I wasn't even personally that interested in that part of it,
Mhm.
but I still was like, ooh, I like, when the things came together. I thought it was really cool. Like as a player, I was like, oh wow, okay, that's a pretty cool story of like why that happened and who that was and stuff like that.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
kudos to you.
well, thank you. I'm glad it wound up, you know, rolling the way it did. And
Yeah, yeah.
like it was my plan to have it, you know, fall out here so that it was more of uh a safer entrance into, you know, the final run that's
Hmm.
supposed to happen, you know,
Yeah. Oh
tomorrow
man,
night.
so many. Yeah, that was great. Uh, just the way everything ended last session too. I thought was a lot of fun.
And
Hey,
I
I had a real quick, like non-initiative based
yeah,
thing,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I
go
just
for
thought
it.
it was really fun and creative, and I wanted to get your take on it. So there was just, have you seen the movie Inception?
Uh
Or
I
are you
have not.
familiar with it?
I'm
Well, it's
familiar.
like, they go into people's dreams and they
Yes.
can sort
Mhm.
of like manifest what they need there. So there's just scene in the movie where, they're like fighting off these guys and they have machine guns, and the one guy's like, oh, you need to dream a little bigger, and he has like a big like
Yes.
rocket launching thing. There was a meme like that, and it was, like the artificer was like, oh, you need to dream a little bigger. Or no, it was a college of creation bard, and then
Yes.
like the meme was like antimatter rifle. I just shared it in Slack. And I was like, that is such a brilliant idea for that college of creation bard. Totally different take. I mean, pending your DM's approval or whatever, but those things don't have a gold value in the DMG if you want to go by raw. Like the antimatter rifle, it does 68 necrotic. It's got 6 shots. So it's like third level bard, boom, it's like animated rifle, pew, pew, pew. And
Yeah,
ask for the minute. I mean, in
I
the right kind of game, I could totally be down with it. I think I might definitely write a post about, I don't know if there's like a CBG or just like a video.
that I feel definitely would have some kind of gold cost associated with it. You know, falling into the ranks of an expensive magic item.
Yeah. But
But
I'm just saying, like, that chart, it's just like, it says value. There's just a line there.
yes,
Um,
but it's definitely
and if you really wanted to get into the Inception, and this came up in our last Dungeons and Delving game, like a warlock with that dream spell, it's like you can visit a hell of a lot of dreams and with the short rest to re-get your spell slots in a night. So
yeah.
uh
I mean, you could honestly, you know, once you get to the point where you have dream, you know, you could just be like, all right, I'm gonna cast a spell to let it do its thing, and then I'm gonna short rest. I'm gonna get it back. I'm gonna do it again. You can just keep going on and on and on.
Mhm.
You know, the
You can
crazy
do it
thing.
2 times before you have a short rest.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm gonna go even crazier and
Actually, you could if you focused on the same thing, you could kill them in their sleep, because I think if they fail their save, they get a level of exhaustion. And then they wake up with like psychic damage. It's like if you cast it on this, or no, they probably can only be affected. It probably says something about being affected, like the same creature at one time.
But if you do it to them every night,
yeah, that's true.
every time they try and sleep, I mean, if
Yeah,
you've got a way of monitoring them.
You can really be Freddy Krueger with that spell, almost.
Absolutely,
That's messed up.
I know that's so.
I had a lot of fun with that little dream scene that we had. I had written that out ahead of time and stuff.
I'm glad that you got to put a little.
I've always wanted to cast that spell.
I will use this as a segue to talk about. You can always find me on Thursdays over at Mini Terrain Domain if you're not deciding to go watch that other very popular Thursday D&D stream that's out there. And there's been some use of the Dream spell. And do you know what happens if you cast Dream to try and communicate with a beholder or some kind of beholder kin?
Oh.
Yeah, so I'll just let you think about that because that's happened with Dawnbringers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we have the first mate of the ship that we were using for a while is the beholder with the 4 eye stalks. Was that a spectator?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And we, he's friendly. He's bound for 100 years to this particular vessel and what have you. And, while he's not on the ship, maybe he's, a bad dude, but on the ship, he's locked into to do a particular role. So we got to role play with him and have some fun, and some things happened. He was introduced many, many seasons ago.
I remember the ship.
And, we've been trying to find out where he is now that the ship is broken. And the best way to do that, they felt, was to send the elf into the beholder's dreams.
Jeez.
So there may or may not be more beholder kin that are the potential offspring of a beholder and an elf. We don't know.
That's such a great spell. Wow, that sounds really fun.
So as always, you guys can find us here, fairly regularly. You can find, the videos that drop on the regular channel Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays. Dave is going to be back this week, with the noon live chat. And we're going to have 2 games this week because you're going to find the finale of season 1 of Dungeons and Delving, as previously mentioned, tomorrow night. But you can also come back on Friday for the next episode of Untraditionally Arcane, where we stopped last time kind of mid-combat. So we'll get to pick right up and get right into the thick of things. So, as always, I very much thank you guys and gals and peoples, and however you want to refer to yourself, for hanging out with us. You can come back and check out all of the videos here on the channel. You can, hang out with us as much or as often as you like. We've got all kinds of fun things, always planned, some always new things in the work. As stated, May 11th is going to be when, Doug is going to be starting that next campaign. So you can say it with me if you want. Till next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.